Hey viewers, and welcome to the channel. My name's Mark. Against better judgment and fiscal advice, we are going to have a look at modifying and rebuilding this. My Ford Falcon XB Coupe. For those that are interested in the details, those that aren't are just going to have to wait. It's a 1975 XB hardtop fitted with the GS Rally Pack. A long time ago removed factory vinyl roof, stereo, and wait for it, sports road wheels. The engine fitted at the factory was a 302 Cleveland, ambitiously rated at 240 brake horsepower, or 179 kilowasps if you're new school. This powerhouse was also backed by a 3-speed T-bar auto. Now, to upset the purists because, well, it's just fun, all evidence of the vinyl roof and also the less than desirable gold paint has been relegated back to 1975. And that's exactly where Morris Albert and his song Feeling should also go for the good of mankind. Anyway, I digress. The kicker for this build is that we are aiming to get it running, registered and on the road to Mildura in November of this year. The reason being is we've been told that there is actually, COVID pending, a hardtop reunion for these vehicles in Mildura, Victoria. So what better way than to run in a brand new build than a 1,000-kilometre round trip all the way to Mildura and back. So we'll see how that goes and stick around and hopefully we'll make it and you can have a bit of a laugh at us. Also, there is surprisingly very little information out there on some of the modifications that we're going to be doing to this vehicle. It is actually quite surprising because they're not all that uncommon. There are some information out there already, but nothing that you could actually just go and follow if you wanted to do that. So this channel is going to aim to have all that information, so anyone who does want to follow the same modifications can. We'll go through some of the bodywork on this vehicle as well. Now, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. It's just going to be very quick, and we'll go through it at Warp Factor because there are actually quite a number of channels out there that have really good information on rust repair and also bodywork. XA Coupe Guy and also Fat Fords being two of the good ones. However, as this vehicle has already been painted, what we'll do is we'll spend 10 minutes and just go through the process on how it got there. So, enjoy! Now, before any build, try to visualise what you want it to be. I'm a mechanic, not an artist like Chip Foose, so I just write them down. This can save you in time and parts as you're not changing your mind during the build when it really costs you. A couple of things to note here, referring back to the build sheet that went through at Warp Factor, is that these cars were built very poorly from factory and the panels fit where they touched. The bumpers on these Falcons were so bad they look like they're off a different type of car. And that's because they were. I wasn't having any of that, as you will soon see. After stripping it down, a dolly was quickly fabricated and the shell was loaded on a trailer to get dipped, so we kind of knew what we had. This highlighted that this supposedly good shell was, as they say in the industry, yep, you know the phrase, uneconomical to restore. Apart from the now obvious massive hole in the sill, the right-hand quarter had also been in the wars. Investigation of the damage had showed that the rear wheel had come off, punched the suitcase out of the rear wheelhouse, and gave the quarter an absolute hiding. Originally what could only be hidden badly by a typical 1970s repair, where it was bashed close, filled with more than an optimal amount of put, which was then sculpted with enough finesse to make Michelangelo proud before throwing on some jam, licking the stamp and sending it. The rear taillight panel and the left-hand quarter weren't much better, revealing that this car's had more hits than the Beatles. Unfortunately, the engine bay also lived through the 80s, meaning the provisions for but not limited to air horns, extra fog lights and associated looms and relays made it holier than the Pope. One plus though was the plenum was mint. The shell was then loaded onto a rotisserie, prepped and sprayed in epoxy. The sills on both sides had more pinholes than we could count. So this required replacement on both sides. The left-hand quarter panel had the rear wheel arch replaced, and those replacement panels from Jamie's garage are bang on. Next was the cross member, the seat braces, and repair to various knocks under the floor, as once all the grime was gone, the damage to the undercarriage made us question if it was once used as the lunar buggy. The original poorly repaired taillight panel needed replacement, so off to the friendly neighbourhood purveyor of very poorly fitting reproduction panels I go. I hand over the new panel to the expert panel beater, and it was promptly likened to a flywire screen on a submarine, or a glass hammer, or a waterproof teabag, or well, you get the drift. The reasons being it allegedly had the wrong profile, it was not enough in the definition of the louvers, and it just didn't fit. Other than that, they're apparently a very fine piece of engineering and marginally better than nothing. Anyway, I digress again. Another genuine, not too rusty Ford one was repaired and fitted, and the reproduction one was returned to from whence it came. With the rear quarter wheel arch cut out and the outer wheelhouse relieved, you can see how far it sprung back into shape when it was no longer under tension. After lots of hammer and dolly work, the outer wheelhouse was replaced and the new wheel arch section could be welded into the quarter. The quarter was all repaired, heat shrunk and metal finished. Not much else to say except the panel beater has talent. Let's have a quick look at the inside, and you can see that looks pretty mint as well. The doors and guards were next to get the treatment, before the whole thing was then covered in epoxy, green this time. I think it's fair to say that the quarter panel looks like I bought one. The panel gaps weren't as good as they could have been, so therefore they were addressed as well. The last of the metalwork was to tuck the bumpers so that they looked like they belonged to this series of car. Nice. So we went from this to this. The downside was that the rear stone tray, which is the panel underneath the bumper, now had a horrific sized gap and just didn't quite tie in with the quarter. Although it's now in poly, you can see that the panel guru has fabricated a brand new panel and tied it in quite nicely. The engine bay also got welded up, beaten and filled. The poly was then rubbed flat, and it's somewhat depressing to see all that expensive product turn to white dust on the floor. Now I'm sure I could throw in a Scarface reference in here, but I'll just leave that one alone. Here's some gratuitous shots of the shell in primer. The other side, in a taillight panel and the now magic right hand quarter. And as you can see, it's very straight, and after yet more running, or rubbing I should say, we were ready for colour. Well, not quite yet. A tie coat went on first. Then we started laying on some of the base coat, and as you can see, the spray painter seems to have a Golf GT40 fetish and also a sense of humour. And we're ready to roll now. And we're out of the booth, blue and shiny. It also went back on the original dolly. Got shiny blue hang-ons too. Nice. Although the bucket with the sanding blocks is a bit of a worry. Now it's not so shiny, but sometimes it's best not to question the method but to look at the results. With minor touch-ups to where the rotisserie was bolted onto the shell so that we could paint it, the GS stripes were reverse stenciled and placed onto the car. It was then time for masking, and the stripes were then sprayed on before being cleared to avoid bubbling, polish, build-up and all other nasties associated with the GS stripes. In the booth after the final clear, and we are looking shiny. Let the pictures do the talking here. And this is the shell returning back to the workshop. And this is where we are today. In the part of the shed it will call home for the next however many months. Now that we have the body sorted and I revived my wallet with a defibrillator placing it in a critical but stable condition, I'll crack on with the reassembly. In upcoming videos we'll look at the process involved in fitting Wilwood front brakes, a customised power distribution fuse and relay box, an Astra power steering pump, customised power steering lines, and also look at a mechanical 4-speed automatic AOD transmission which is out of a Fox body Mustang. We'll also look at XF Falcon rear brakes and the handbrake setup, and also fitting a set of thermo switching AU electric fans. Although if there are any other processes of assembly that you'd like to see, please add it to the comments section and I'll see what I can do. If this does sound interesting, please like, share and subscribe for more installments of Project XB.